Sometimes the most powerful people in the world are hidden in plain sight, dismissed by those who judge only by appearances. What happens when a security guard refuses entry to someone who could change the fate of nations? This is the true story of a moment when protocol met power. When assumptions crumbled, and when one general's shocked recognition revealed that the most dangerous mistake is underestimating the quiet strength of those we overlook. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine concrete of Fort Braxton, one of America's most secure military installations. Staff Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez adjusted his uniform and checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. His shift at the main security checkpoint had been routine so far, just the usual parade of military personnel, contractors and authorized visitors presenting their credentials with practiced efficiency. Rodriguez took pride in his work. In his 12 years of military service, he had never allowed an unauthorized person through his checkpoint. His attention to detail and strict adherence to protocol had earned him commendations and the respect of his superiors. Today felt no different from any other Tuesday morning until she appeared. The woman approached the gate with a measured pace that suggested neither hurry nor hesitation. She appeared to be in her mid-60s, wearing a simple navy blue pantsuit that looked like it came from a department store rather than a designer boutique. Her gray hair was pulled back in a practical bun and she carried only a small leather purse and a manila folder. Everything about her appearance screamed ordinary civilian, the kind of person who might work in a bank or a school administration office. Rodriguez straightened as she reached his window. His training kicked in automatically, scanning for any obvious security threats while maintaining a professional demeanor. The woman smiled politely and reached into her purse, presumably for identification. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady and unremarkable. "I'm here for the strategic planning meeting with General Morrison." Rodriguez accepted the ID card she handed him, a standard civilian contractor badge that looked legitimate at first glance. However, as he ran it through his scanner, a red light flashed. His computer screen displayed a message that made his stomach drop. Rodriguez had dealt with similar situations before, usually involving contractors who had outdated credentials or civilian employees who had made honest mistakes about their access levels. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but your credentials don't show the proper clearance for entry to this facility," Rodriguez explained, maintaining his professional tone. "You'll need to contact your supervisor or the appropriate office to update your access level." The woman's eyebrows rose slightly, but her expression remained calm. "I believe there might be some confusion," she said. "Could you please call General Morrison's office? They're expecting me." Rodriguez had heard this request countless times. Unauthorized visitors often claimed to have meetings with high-ranking officers, hoping to pressure their way through security. His training was clear. When in doubt, deny access and escalate through proper channels. "Ma'am, I understand your situation, but I cannot allow entry without proper credentials. If you have a scheduled meeting, the General's office would have ensured you received the appropriate clearance in advance." Rodriguez handed the ID card back to her. "I suggest you contact the person who arranged your meeting and have them verify your credentials through the proper channels." The woman accepted her ID card back without any sign of frustration. Instead, she seemed almost amused, as if she had expected this exact scenario. "Young man, I appreciate your diligence, but I think there's been a misunderstanding. May I speak with your supervisor?" Rodriguez felt a flicker of irritation. This was a common tactic used by people trying to circumvent security protocols. They would demand to speak to supervisors, hoping to find someone who might be more flexible or less attentive to proper procedures. "Ma'am, my supervisor will tell you the same thing I'm telling you. No proper credentials means no entry. It's that simple." Rodriguez's tone remained professional, but there was a firmness to it now. "If you'd like to wait while I contact General Morrison's office to verify your claim, you're welcome to do so, but you'll need to wait outside the security perimeter." The woman nodded, as if this response was perfectly reasonable. Of course, security protocols exist for good reasons. She stepped back from the window and moved to a small waiting area just outside the checkpoint, where she sat on a metal bench and opened her manila folder. Rodriguez watched her for a moment, noting how she seemed completely at ease despite being denied entry. Most people in her situation would show signs of stress or frustration, but this woman appeared to be reviewing documents as if she were sitting in a library, rather than being blocked from entering a military base. Shaking his head, Rodriguez turned his attention back to his duties. The morning traffic was picking up, and a line of vehicles was beginning to form behind the checkpoint. For the next hour, he processed the steady stream of authorized personnel, occasionally glancing at the woman on the bench who continued to read through her papers with apparent interest. Around 10:30, a black sedan with government plates approached the checkpoint. Rodriguez recognized the vehicle immediately. It belonged to General Morrison himself.
The driver, a young lieutenant, rolled down the window and presented his credentials along with those of his passenger.
General Morrison returning from the Pentagon meeting, the lieutenant announced. Rodriguez processed the credentials quickly and professionally, but as he handed them back, he noticed General Morrison leaning forward in the back seat, his eyes fixed on something beyond the checkpoint.
The general's expression was strange, a mixture of confusion and what looked like dawning recognition. "Lieutenant, stop the vehicle," General Morrison ordered suddenly. The sedan came to a halt just past the checkpoint. Rodriguez watched in his mirror as General Morrison stepped out of the vehicle, his 4-star rank clearly visible on his uniform.
The general was an imposing figure, well over 6 feet tall, with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. He had a reputation for being both brilliant and demanding, the kind of officer who had earned his position through decades of exceptional service. But now, as Rodriguez watched, this distinguished general stood frozen beside his vehicle, staring at the woman on the bench with an expression of complete shock. The woman looked up from her papers and smiled, the same polite expression she had worn when Rodriguez had denied her entry. She stood up slowly, smoothing down her simple pantsuit, and walked toward the general with the unhurried pace of someone who had all the time in the world. "Hello, David," she said, her voice carrying easily across the distance between them.
"I hope I'm not too late for our meeting." General Morrison's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, recognition, and what looked like panic. He glanced quickly at Rodriguez, then back at the woman, then at Rodriguez again. When he spoke, his voice was strained. "Ma'am, I had no idea you were..." He stopped mid-sentence, seeming to struggle for words.
The general's reaction was unlike anything he had ever seen. This was a man who had commanded troops in 3 different combat zones, who had briefed presidents, and negotiated with foreign military leaders.
Nothing should have been able to rattle him like this. The woman walked closer to the general, and Rodriguez could see her more clearly now. There was something different about her demeanor, a subtle shift that he couldn't quite identify. She still looked like an ordinary civilian, but there was something in the way she moved, the way she held herself, that suggested hidden depths. "I believe there was some confusion at the checkpoint," she said, her voice still pleasant but with an undertone that Rodriguez hadn't noticed before. "The young sergeant was very professional, but my credentials seemed to have caused some technical difficulties." General Morrison looked at Rodriguez with an expression that mixed urgency with something that might have been fear. "Sergeant? What exactly happened here?" Rodriguez straightened to attention, confused by the general's tone, but determined to explain his actions clearly. "Sir, the individual presented credentials that showed insufficient clearance for base entry. I followed standard protocol and denied access pending verification through proper channels." "What type of credentials did she present?" the general asked, his voice tight. "A standard civilian contractor badge, sir." The scanner showed a clearance level insufficient for base access. General Morrison closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, Rodriguez could see something that looked almost like resignation. The general walked quickly to the checkpoint window, leaving the woman standing beside his vehicle. "Sergeant Rodriguez, I need to see those credentials immediately," the general said in a low voice. Rodriguez was thoroughly confused now, but followed the order without question. He retrieved the ID card from where the woman had placed it on the counter and handed it to General Morrison. The general examined it carefully, turning it over in his hands and holding it up to the light. After a long moment, General Morrison looked up at Rodriguez with an expression that was hard to read. "Sergeant, did you scan the back of this card as well as the front?" "No, sir. Standard protocol is to scan the front magnetic stripe," the scanner showed. "Scan the back," General Morrison interrupted. Rodriguez took the card and fed it through the scanner again, this time ensuring that the reader accessed the strip on the reverse side. The screen flickered for a moment, then displayed a completely different result. Where before it had shown access denied, it now showed a clearance level that Rodriguez had never seen before. The classification codes were unfamiliar, but the access level indicator showed something far beyond top secret. Rodriguez stared at the screen in disbelief. "Sir, I don't understand. This shows that you just denied entry to someone with the highest security clearance in the United States government," General Morrison said quietly. "Someone whose clearance level is so high that most of our scanning equipment isn't even programmed to recognize it." Rodriguez felt the blood drain from his face. "Sir, I had no way of knowing the initial scan showed." "The initial scan showed exactly what it was supposed to show," the general said. "Security through obscurity. Only specific scanners are programmed to read both sides of those credentials, and only when there's reason to suspect they might be dealing with someone at that level.
Rodriguez looked out at the woman who was still standing patiently beside the general's vehicle. She had returned to reading her papers, seemingly unbothered by the drama unfolding at the checkpoint.
"Sir, who is she?" Rodriguez asked, though he was beginning to suspect that he didn't really want to know the answer. General Morrison handed the ID card back to him.
"Sergeant, you just spent an hour making one of the most influential people in national security wait on a bench because you were doing your job exactly as you were trained to do it." The general's expression was complex, mixing approval for Rodriguez's adherence to protocol with concern about the situation's implications.
"She could have had me court-martialed, could have had this entire base shut down for a security review, could have ended my career with a single phone call," General Morrison continued. "Instead, she sat on that bench reading what I suspect are highly classified strategic assessments and waited for me to arrive so we could sort this out properly." "Sir, what should I do?" "You should log this incident exactly as it happened," the general said. "You followed protocol perfectly.
The system worked exactly as it was designed to work. The fact that our equipment couldn't properly identify her credentials on the first scan isn't your fault. It's a feature, not a bug."
General Morrison paused and looked out at the woman again.
"But Sergeant, you should also understand that you just met someone who operates at a level where their very existence is classified."
Someone who makes decisions that affect global security on a daily basis. Someone who, despite having the power to destroy careers with a word, chose to sit quietly and wait rather than abuse that power.
Rodriguez followed the general's gaze.
The woman looked up at that moment and gave them both a small wave, as if she were greeting neighbors over a backyard fence, rather than acknowledging a potentially career-ending security incident. "Is she going to report this, sir?" Rodriguez asked.
General Morrison smiled for the first time since stepping out of his vehicle. "Sergeant, I suspect that by the time our meeting is over, she'll have turned this incident into a recommendation for improving our security protocols."
People at her level don't see problems. They see opportunities to make systems better. The general straightened his uniform and checked his watch.
"Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting to attend. And, Sergeant?"
"Yes, sir. The next time someone's credentials show an anomaly, especially if they seem unusually calm about being denied entry, you might want to try scanning both sides of the card before sending them to wait on a bench."
As General Morrison walked back toward his vehicle and the mysterious woman, Rodriguez realized that his ordinary Tuesday morning had just become the most extraordinary shift of his military career. He watched as the general escorted the woman toward the base entrance, noting how their conversation seemed relaxed and professional despite the morning's confusion.
Just before they disappeared into the administrative building, the woman turned and walked back toward the checkpoint. Rodriguez straightened, unsure of what to expect.
"Sergeant Rodriguez," she said, offering him the same polite smile she had worn all morning. "I wanted to thank you for your professionalism today. You did exactly what you were supposed to do, exactly as you were trained to do it. That kind of attention to detail and adherence to protocol is what keeps our people safe." She paused and added, "I'll be mentioning your exemplary conduct in my report. The security of this facility is clearly in very capable hands." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Rodriguez staring after her in amazement. As the morning progressed and normal traffic resumed through his checkpoint, he found himself replaying the encounter over and over in his mind. He had followed every rule, done everything by the book, and somehow ended up in a situation that was simultaneously a major security incident and a perfect example of the system working as intended. Most importantly, he had learned that sometimes the most powerful people are the ones who look the most ordinary, and that true authority often comes wrapped in patience and understanding rather than demands and threats.
The rest of Rodriguez's shift passed without incident, but he knew that this morning would stay with him for the rest of his career. He had met someone who operated in the shadows of power, someone whose influence was so significant that even generals froze in recognition, and he had learned that sometimes doing your job perfectly means being humble enough to realize that there's always more to learn about the world you're protecting.
3 hours after the incident at the gate, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez found himself sitting in the base commander's office, facing Colonel Patricia Hayes, across a mahogany desk that had seen decades of military service. The colonel was known throughout Fort Braxton as a fair but demanding officer, who had risen through the ranks by maintaining the highest standards of military excellence.
Today, however, she seemed unusually interested in the details of what should have been a routine security checkpoint interaction. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Colonel Hayes began, consulting a file that seemed surprisingly thick for such a recent incident. "I want you to walk me through this morning's events one more time, but I need you to focus on details you might not have considered significant at the time.
Rodriguez straightened in his chair, his mind racing through the morning's events for what felt like the 100th time. Ma'am, the individual approached my checkpoint at approximately 0847 hours.
She presented what appeared to be standard civilian contractor credentials, but the initial scan showed insufficient clearance for base entry. Describe her demeanor during this initial interaction. Colonel Hayes interrupted.
Rodriguez paused, thinking carefully. That's what was unusual, ma'am. Most people who get denied entry show some level of frustration or urgency. They argue, they make phone calls, they demand to speak to supervisors.
This woman just accepted it. She seemed almost like she expected it to happen.
Colonel Hayes made a note in her file. Go on. She asked to speak with my supervisor, but when I explained that wouldn't change anything, she simply nodded and went to wait on the bench.
She spent the next hour reading through papers in a manila folder, completely calm, like she was waiting for a doctor's appointment, rather than being locked out of a secure military facility. Did you observe anything about these papers she was reading? Rodriguez thought back to his occasional glances at the woman.
They looked official, ma'am. White pages with what appeared to be typed text, maybe some charts or graphs. She was reading them carefully, sometimes going back to previous pages, but I couldn't see any specific content from my position. Colonel Hayes leaned back in her chair. Sergeant, what I'm about to tell you is classified at a level that requires your complete discretion. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am. The woman you encountered this morning is Dr. Margaret Chen, Deputy Director of the Defense Intelligence Analysis Center. Dr. Chen operates at a clearance level that most military personnel will never even know exists.
She has direct access to the President, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and heads of allied intelligence services around the world.
Rodriguez felt his stomach drop.
He had read about the Defense Intelligence Analysis Center in military journals, but it was one of those organizations that seemed more like a myth than a real place. The DIA was rumored to be responsible for the most sensitive intelligence analysis in the United States government, handling information so classified that even its existence was barely acknowledged.
Ma'am, how was I supposed to know? Her credentials showed. Her credentials showed exactly what they were supposed to show. Colonel Hayes interrupted.
Dr. Chen carries what we call stealth clearance identification. It's designed to appear as standard contractor credentials to anyone who doesn't have specific authorization to recognize it. Only certain scanning equipment at certain facilities can properly identify her true clearance level. Rodriguez was beginning to understand the magnitude of what had happened. Why would someone at her level be coming to Fort Braxton, ma'am? Colonel Hayes closed the file and leaned forward.
Dr. Chen has been conducting a comprehensive review of military installation security protocols across the United States.
This morning's incident wasn't an accident, Sergeant. It was a test. The words hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. A test, ma'am? Doctor?
Chen has been visiting military facilities unannounced for the past 6 months, using her stealth credentials to see how security personnel handle unusual situations. She's particularly interested in how our people respond when standard protocols encounter edge cases.
Rodriguez's mind raced through the implications. So she was deliberately testing whether I would follow proper procedures even when faced with someone claiming to have high-level meetings?
And according to the preliminary report I received from General Morrison, you passed that test with flying colors. You followed protocol exactly as written, you didn't allow yourself to be pressured or intimidated, and you maintained professional courtesy throughout the interaction.
Rodriguez felt a mixture of relief and continued anxiety. But ma'am, I denied entry to someone with the highest security clearance in the government. Doesn't that represent a massive security failure? Colonel Hayes smiled for the first time during the conversation. Sergeant, you just identified one of the central paradoxes of security work.
Dr. Chen's credentials are designed to fail standard security checks. The system worked exactly as intended. If her credentials had immediately shown her true clearance level, it would have represented a much more serious security vulnerability.
The colonel stood and walked to her window, which offered a view of the base's main administrative buildings.
Dr. He then Korea bangs a distance entry of London.
Chen spent her hour on that bench analyzing our foot traffic patterns, observing our vehicle inspection procedures, and noting how our personnel interact with each other and with visitors. Nothing escapes her attention.
What kind of report will she file about this morning's incident? Colonel Hayes turned back to face Rodriguez. That's where things get interesting, Sergeant. Dr. Chen's preliminary assessment praised our checkpoint procedures and specifically commended your adherence to protocol. However, she also identified several areas where our security systems could be improved. The colonel returned to her desk and opened another file. For example, she noted that our scanning equipment should be upgraded to handle multiple types of credentials more efficiently.
She recommended additional training for security personnel on recognizing and responding to unusual credentialing situations.
She also suggested implementing a secondary verification system for cases where initial scans produce unexpected results. Rodriguez processed this information carefully. So even though I followed proper procedures, there are still improvements that could be made?
Dr. Chen operates on the principle that every interaction, successful or not, can teach us something valuable about how our systems work in real-world conditions.
Her job isn't to find fault. It's to find opportunities for improvement. Colonel Hayes paused and consulted her notes again.
She was particularly impressed by your decision to offer to contact General Morrison's office to verify her claimed meeting. Most security personnel either accept questionable credentials too easily or reject them without offering alternative verification methods.
You found the middle ground that maintains security while providing customer service. Rodriguez thought back to his training and the countless scenarios he had practiced.
None of them had prepared him for dealing with someone whose very existence was classified, but somehow his basic approach had been correct. Ma'am, what happens now?
Now, Dr.
Chen will complete her assessment of Fort Braxton's security posture and include her recommendations in a report that will go directly to the Pentagon. Some of those recommendations will likely result in changes to how we handle unusual credentialing situations across the entire military.
Colonel Hayes closed the files on her desk and looked directly at Rodriguez. But more immediately, you're going to receive additional training on advanced security protocols, and you'll be assigned to work with the base security office on implementing some of Dr.
Chen's preliminary recommendations. Rodriguez felt a surge of pride mixed with apprehension.
Additional training, ma'am?
Dr. Chen specifically requested that you be included in the pilot program for new security procedures. She believes that personnel who demonstrate strong adherence to existing protocols are the best candidates for learning and implementing enhanced procedures.
The colonel stood, indicating that the meeting was coming to an end. Sergeant, what happened this morning illustrates something important about military service.
Sometimes the most significant contributions come from doing ordinary jobs extraordinarily well. You didn't know you were part of a high-level security assessment, but your professionalism and attention to detail made a positive impression on someone whose opinion carries enormous weight in defense circles.
As Rodriguez prepared to leave, Colonel Hayes added one final thought.
Chen will be returning to Fort Braxton next month to observe the implementation of her recommended security upgrades. She specifically asked that you be the one to brief her on how the new procedures are working.
Rodriguez felt both honored and nervous about the prospect of another encounter with Dr. Chen.
Will I be properly briefed on her actual status for that meeting, ma'am? Colonel Hayes smiled. That's part of what makes this interesting, Sergeant.
Dr. Chen prefers to interact with personnel who don't know her full background.
She believes she gets more honest assessments that way. So yes, you'll be briefed on the new security procedures, but you'll still be expected to treat her as you would any other visiting consultant.
As Rodriguez left the colonel's office, his mind was spinning with the implications of what he had learned. He had spent the morning thinking he had encountered an ordinary civilian with credential problems.
Instead, he had been tested by one of the most influential people in American national security, and somehow he had passed.
Walking back toward his quarters, Rodriguez reflected on the strange nature of military service. You could spend months preparing for scenarios that never occurred, only to find yourself in completely unexpected situations, where your basic training and personal integrity were the only guides available. This morning had been one of those situations, and the fact that he had handled it well gave him confidence that he was prepared for whatever challenges his military career might bring. The next few weeks would bring new training, new responsibilities, and new challenges.
But Rodriguez had learned something valuable about the hidden complexities of security work and the importance of maintaining professional standards even when you don't understand the full context of what you're dealing with. Most importantly, he had discovered that sometimes the most powerful people in government are the ones who choose to operate quietly, testing systems and improving procedures through patient observation rather than dramatic intervention. Dr. Chen's approach had been a masterclass in leadership through example, and Rodriguez knew that the lessons from this encounter would influence his approach to military service for years to come. As he prepared for his next shift, Rodriguez found himself looking forward to the opportunity to implement the new security procedures that would result from Dr. Chen's assessment.
He had played a small but important role in improving military security across the entire United States, and that knowledge would stay with him throughout his career. The ordinary Tuesday morning that had started with a routine credential check had become a defining moment in his military service, proof that excellence in small things can have far-reaching consequences that extend far beyond what any individual soldier might imagine.
6 weeks later, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez stood at the same checkpoint where his extraordinary encounter had begun. But everything around him had changed. The scanning equipment had been upgraded with new software that could handle multiple types of credentials more efficiently.
New protocols had been implemented for unusual credentialing situations. Most significantly, Rodriguez himself had been transformed from a checkpoint guard into a key player in Fort Braxton's enhanced security program.
The morning sun cast the same long shadows across the base, but Rodriguez now approached his duties with a deeper understanding of their importance. He had completed 3 weeks of intensive training in advanced security protocols, learning about clearance levels he had never known existed in credentialing systems that operated in the shadows of government bureaucracy.
Today marked the return of Dr. Margaret Chen for her follow-up assessment, and Rodriguez had spent the previous evening reviewing every detail of the new procedures he would be demonstrating.
Despite Colonel Hayes' warning that he should treat Dr. Chen like any other visiting consultant, Rodriguez couldn't help feeling nervous about the encounter.
At exactly 9 o'clock, a familiar figure approached the checkpoint. Chen looked exactly as she had 6 weeks earlier. The same navy blue pantsuit, the same practical demeanor, the same manila folder tucked under her arm. But Rodriguez's perspective on her had been fundamentally altered by his knowledge of her true role in the national security apparatus.
"Good morning," Dr. Chen said with the same polite smile she had worn during their first encounter.
I'm here for a security assessment meeting with Colonel Hayes. Rodriguez had been briefed to treat this as a normal visitor processing situation, implementing the new procedures while maintaining his professional demeanor.
He accepted her credentials and fed them through the upgraded scanner, which now displayed a more sophisticated interface with multiple verification options. "Welcome to Fort Braxton, ma'am," Rodriguez said, following the new protocol script.
I'll need to run your credentials through our enhanced verification system. This may take a moment longer than our previous process. The new scanner processed both sides of Dr. Chen's identification automatically, displaying clearance information in a format that was both more comprehensive and more secure than the previous system. Where the old scanner had shown only basic access levels, the new system provided graduated clearance verification that could handle even the most specialized credentials without compromising security. "The system shows you have appropriate clearance for base access," Rodriguez announced, but then followed the new procedure by adding, "However, due to the sensitive nature of your scheduled meeting, I'll need to implement our enhanced verification protocol."
Dr. Chen nodded approvingly as Rodriguez picked up a secure telephone that connected directly to the base commander's office.
This was one of the key improvements that had resulted from Dr. Chen's original assessment, a streamlined process for verifying unusual credentials that maintained security while providing better service to legitimate visitors.
Colonel Hayes' office. This is Checkpoint Alpha requesting verification for a visitor with enhanced clearance credentials. Rodriguez spoke into the phone. Within 30 seconds, he received confirmation and additional instructions.
"Dr. Chen, you've been cleared for escort to the administrative building," Rodriguez announced. "Corporal Martinez will accompany you to Colonel Hayes' office." A young corporal emerged from the security office, properly briefed and ready to escort Dr. Chen through the base.
This was another improvement that had resulted from the original incident. High-clearance visitors were now provided with escorts who understood their status and could ensure they reached their destinations efficiently. As Dr.
Chen prepared to leave with her escort, she paused at Rodriguez's window. "Sergeant, I noticed several improvements in your procedures since my last visit. How has the transition to the new protocols been?" Rodriguez had been coached on how to respond to questions about the security upgrades, balancing operational transparency with security requirements. "The new systems have improved our efficiency while maintaining our security standards, ma'am. The enhanced verification process helps us handle unusual situations more effectively."
Have you encountered any challenges with the new procedures?
The learning curve was steep initially, Rodriguez admitted, but the additional training prepared us well.
The most significant improvement is that we can now verify complex credentials without compromising security or keeping legitimate visitors waiting unnecessarily.
Dr. Animas, Chen smiled, and Rodriguez could see genuine satisfaction in her expression. "That's exactly what we hope to achieve. Thank you for your professionalism, Sergeant." As Dr. Chen disappeared into the administrative building with her escort, Rodriguez reflected on how much had changed since their first encounter. The new procedures had been tested dozens of times over the past month, handling everything from foreign military attachés to congressional staff members with specialized clearances.
Each test had proven that the upgrades were working exactly as intended. 2 hours later, Rodriguez received a call from Colonel Hayes' office requesting his presence for a debriefing session. He found himself once again sitting across from the colonel, but this time, Dr.
Chen was present as well, having shed any pretense of being an ordinary consultant.
"Sergeant Rodriguez,
Chen began. "I want to discuss your experience with the implementation of our new security protocols." Rodriguez straightened, prepared to provide a comprehensive assessment. "Ma'am, the new procedures have significantly improved our ability to handle complex credentialing situations while maintaining security standards. The upgraded scanning equipment has reduced processing time for unusual credentials from several minutes to less than 30 seconds. What about the training component?" The advanced security training provided excellent preparation for implementing the new procedures. "Understanding the different types of credentials and clearance levels has helped me make better decisions about when to apply enhanced verification protocols."
Dr. Chen made notes in a file that Rodriguez noticed was considerably thicker than it had been during their first meeting. "Have you observed any unintended consequences from the new procedures?" Rodriguez considered the question carefully. Initially, some routine visitors were concerned about the enhanced verification process, but once we explained that it was designed to provide better service while maintaining security, most appreciated the additional attention to their needs. "Give me an example." "Last week, a civilian contractor arrived with credentials that would have caused problems under our old system. With the new procedures, I was able to verify his legitimate access within minutes and provide him with appropriate escort services. Under the old system, he might have spent hours trying to resolve credential discrepancies."
Dr. Chen nodded approvingly.
"That's exactly the kind of improvement we were hoping to achieve. The security shouldn't be a barrier to legitimate access, it should be a facilitator."
Sergeant Rodriguez has become one of our most effective trainers for the new procedures. He's helped several other security personnel adapt to the enhanced protocols.
Rodriguez felt pride at the recognition, but also a deeper sense of responsibility. The training emphasized that security is ultimately about protecting people and facilitating mission accomplishment.
The new procedures help us do both more effectively. Dr. Chen closed her file and looked directly at Rodriguez.
"Sergeant, your initial handling of our first encounter demonstrated that you understood the principles of good security work even before you received formal training in advanced protocols. That foundation made you an ideal candidate for implementing these improvements.
Based on your performance over the past 6 weeks, I'm recommending you for selection to attend the Defense Security Specialist course at the National Defense University. It's an intensive program that prepares military personnel for advanced security assignments."
Rodriguez felt stunned by the opportunity. The Defense Security Specialist course was legendary within military circles, known for producing some of the most skilled security professionals in government service. Graduates often went on to assignments with special operations units, embassy security details, and other high-profile positions. "Ma'am, I'm honored by the recommendation, but I'm not sure I'm qualified for that level of training."
Chen smiled. "Sergeant qualification isn't just about technical knowledge. It's about judgment, integrity, and the ability to maintain standards under pressure."
You demonstrated all of those qualities during our first encounter and have continued to demonstrate them during the implementation of new procedures," Colonel Hayes added. "The course selection committee specifically looks for personnel who can adapt existing skills to new challenges while maintaining core professional values. Your experience here makes you an ideal candidate." As the meeting concluded, Rodriguez found himself contemplating the unexpected trajectory his career had taken. A routine morning at a security checkpoint had led to advanced training, increased responsibilities, and now the opportunity for specialized education that could open doors throughout the defense establishment. Walking back to his quarters that evening, Rodriguez encountered several junior enlisted personnel who had heard about his upcoming selection for the specialist course. Their questions and congratulations reminded him that his experience had implications beyond his own career development. "Sergeant Rodriguez," called out Private First Class Johnson, a young soldier who had recently joined the base security team. "Is it true you're going to the advanced security course?"
That's the plan, Johnson.
The opportunity came up based on some recent work with new security protocols. What advice would you give someone who wants to advance in security work? Rodriguez thought about the question, remembering his own journey from routine checkpoint duty to specialized assignments.
"Focus on doing your current job excellently rather than worrying about future opportunities. Master the basics before trying to learn advanced techniques.
Most importantly, remember that security work is ultimately about serving others, protecting the people and missions that depend on you." Private Johnson nodded earnestly. "Did you always know you wanted to specialize in security?"
Honestly, I never thought beyond doing my job well and serving honorably. The advanced opportunities came because I tried to maintain high standards in routine work.
Excellence in small things can lead to opportunities you never imagined." As Rodriguez continued toward his quarters, he reflected on the wisdom Dr. Trey's
Chen had shared during their debriefing session. She had explained that the most effective security professionals were those who understood that their work was part of a larger mission to protect democratic institutions and national security interests.
Security isn't about creating barriers, she said. It's about creating conditions where legitimate activities can occur safely and efficiently.
The best security professionals are those who can facilitate mission accomplishment while preventing unauthorized access or activities. That evening, Rodriguez sat at his desk and began preparing his application for the Defense Security Specialist course.
As he wrote about his experiences and career goals, he found himself thinking about the unlikely chain of events that had started with a woman in a navy blue pantsuit being denied entry at his checkpoint. He had learned that excellence in military service often comes from unexpected directions.
Sometimes the most significant career developments result from simply doing your job well when nobody important is watching. Sometimes the most powerful people are the ones who look the most ordinary, and sometimes the most valuable lessons come from situations that initially seem like mistakes or problems.
Most importantly, Rodriguez had discovered that military service provides opportunities to contribute to something much larger than individual career advancement. His work on improving security procedures would eventually benefit thousands of military personnel and civilian employees across dozens of installations. The training he would receive at the specialist course would prepare him to take on even greater responsibilities in protecting national security interests.
As he finished his application and prepared for bed, Rodriguez looked forward to the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. The woman at the gate had shown him that true leadership often operates quietly, improving systems through patient observation and thoughtful analysis rather than dramatic gestures. That lesson would guide his approach to military service for the rest of his career. The ordinary Tuesday morning that had started with a routine security check had become the foundation for a career dedicated to excellence in service, proof that sometimes the most significant opportunities come disguised as ordinary encounters with extraordinary people who choose to remain hidden in plain sight.